Pittsburgh Steeler fans, welcome to the Sunday night Q&A. This is Jeremy Betz, and I'm joined by Chris Pugh. Chris, how are you doing tonight, man?
I'm good. I'm excited to be with you, man. I feel like we're
Yeah.
aging rock bands, and we've done our own thing for a while, and we're finally performing together. This is our first time podcasting together. I'm excited, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Co-ops of any kind are fantastic for the BTSC crew, and looking forward to talking some Steelers with you guys. Looks like we got a few people in the live chat. Shout out to you guys coming in and taking a listen and a watch to this Sunday night Q&A. Sundays are busy days for a lot of people, and you wouldn't think so, right? Typically, it's like, hey, Sunday, day off, right? But a lot of people go to church a couple times. A lot of people have fishing trips. And Chris, you had work today, man. What's going on with that?
Oh, I do work with USA Today. Just had to work on Sunday.
Gotcha.
Just it happens, but we made it. We're alive. It's good.
There you go. Well, I just got back from Raleigh to Asheville, North Carolina. So it was like a 4-hour drive. Got home at about 7 o'clock, and we drove through a lot of rain. But other than that, no, not too bad. So we'll jump in here, and we're going to talk some Steelers training camp. And then we're also going to answer some of your questions if you have any. I've got a Daredevil. I've got Claude Bishop, George Teston. State of the Steelers, man, that's an interesting question, right? We're going to try to figure that out here some tonight. But looks like a bunch of guys just here to chat Steelers. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop those, and we'll talk about those. But, Chris, I wanted to ask you, man, it is 2 weeks from one of the biggest days of the year, and that's the start of training camp. And the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to be reporting back to Latrobe College, or St. Vincent College in Latrobe, and back to the old grindstone in a place where Mike Tomlin's familiar with trying to find guys who enjoy the misery, right? And there's going to be some misery out there. We're going to talk about some guys we're looking forward to seeing, but how do you feel about the guys returning to Latrobe this year? What's that like for you?
Yeah, I think it's exciting. I think for the fans especially, there's a history and a tradition of going to Latrobe. Obviously, with COVID, things had to change, but thankfully we're seeming to be getting back to normal. So it's good to see them returning to Latrobe, and it'll be exciting to see. I mean, really, Jeremy, this is probably the most anticipated training camp in the last, I don't know, 20 years. I mean, I think, first of all, obviously the quarterback, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But I think
Right.
the Steelers have less guys that there's more competition for a lot of positions and a lot of potential depth. And the hope for the success of the Steelers is if some of these guys are competing for depth positions can break out. And if a lot of those guys do that, the Steelers could have a really good year this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing the upside of some of these guys. And, training camp, we don't see a lot of like, hey, how these guys are going to look on the field. Some of these guys are workout warriors. They know how to practice and look good. And then come game day, we're not sure. So it's going to be fun to see what we get. Let's talk real quick. Ron Schultz had a question here, and it's a fun one, right? We've been talking Acrisure for a couple weeks now, and I don't know if I'm going to get used to it, man. But Ron says if the Steelers cut a side deal with Heinz and Kraft to keep the ketchup bottle scoreboard at Acrisure Stadium, yeah, that's about right. The kerfuffle over naming rights stops instantly, correct? What do you think? What do you think, Chris?
I don't know, man. I'm probably going to get booed out of here, but look, I like tradition. I like Heinz Field. I like Three River Stadium. But look, they got offered $150 million over 10 years to change their name.
Right.
If I got offered $150 million over 10 years to change my name, I'm signing up. Call me Acrisure tonight. I will sign up for that. I know there's
right.
tradition. I love the tradition. I hate to see things change, but when you read how much they got paid, look, take the ketchup balls down, whatever. Here's the money the Steelers need to operate, and at least they're spending on appropriate places. They re-signed T.J. Watt, they re-signed Mika Fitzpatrick. Hey, if they can keep current players, change the stadium name, money helps the team compete and stay well, it doesn't bother me as much as it does other people.
Sure, and one of the things I've been always been thinking with this whole thing, and I'm not a huge fan of the name, like Acrisure Stadium. Yeah, whatever. Not a huge fan of like what the actual name turned out to be, but the fact that it's not Heinz anymore, that's not necessarily the problem for me. I think it kind of fits well that Ben Roethlisberger is the face of Heinz Field, right? And we're gonna have a new face, a new stadium, and hopefully some new faces, hopefully uh, to secure that name as one of the great stadiums again as well, a place where some Super Bowl champions reside. And Ben Roethlisberger going out after 2021, stadium changing from Heinz Field to Acrisure Stadium after 2021 kind of fits to me with his departure there. So um,
I see what you're saying, but to be honest with you, it's a money deal. I mean, if this happened halfway
absolutely.
during Ben's career and somebody paid up 150 million, name would have changed 10 years ago. And again,
Yeah.
I love the history of it. You know what? I'll be honest with you. Let's get back to train camp discussion because I think why this became such a big deal is we're antsy. We're ready for training camp. So we're on edge. We want to see these guys in the field. So when stuff happens like them changing the name of the stadium, we all freak out and get panicked. I mean, and I think that's why everyone got freaked out with the stadium name. I mean, let's put jerseys on, and start hitting people. I mean, that's what we're all waiting
Right.
for. The anticipation is making us kind of freak out about small stuff like stadium names.
Yeah, man. Hey, replace the ketchup bottles with money bags, right? Dropping dollar bills, and it'll work.
If the Steelers win, they can make it mustard. They can have ham
Hey,
sandwiches on the scoreboard. I don't care. I mean,
right?
again, love Heinz Field, but again, the name of the game is winning. I mean, if they go 2-15 next year in Heinz Field, I mean, the record's more important to me than what the stadium name is.
Sure. Our partner in crime over here at BTSC, Dave Schofield, makes a good point. And it's the name of the game. It looks like, but Kraft Heinz worth 45 billion, Acrisure worth 3.8 billion. Sounds like somebody wanted it more, right?
Yes.
That's what we talk about in football.
Yeah, let's scream. If we want to have this argument, and I feel awkward having the argument because it's not a big deal. But if we want to yell at somebody, yell at Heinz. Yeah, Dave's right. I mean, come on. Ante up Heinz. I mean, you've got billions of dollars. Why not? And again, it's marketing. I mean, I work in marketing, and a lot of times it depends on how much is it worth for someone to take out an advertisement. And apparently Heinz didn't feel it was worth enough. So if you want somebody angry at, and that's where our country is going to these days, get mad at Heinz, not Acrisure.
That's right. Well, let's circle this back around to training camp and also say hi to Reginald Rivers from Bartlett, Tennessee. What's up, Reginald? Thanks for joining us here on the Steelers Q&A from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com. We're going to talk some guys we're looking forward to see at training camp, and I think the quarterbacks are kind of a given here. So let's kind of go with some guys that may be under the radar, Chris, and we'll talk a couple guys here that maybe you see having a big impact on position battles or just on their individual career and what the Steelers season is going to look like coming up. Who's on the top of your list as a guy that might fly under the radar a little bit, but a guy we need to see some good things out of in training camp?
I'm curious about the receiver battle. I'm a little bit grumpy toward Deontay Johnson and Claypool because they didn't compete up to expectations. I mean, Johnson had a good year, but sometimes Johnson didn't step up as much as I wanted to in big games. So I love the fact that you have Austin, and I love the fact that Pickens, they drafted them. I want those guys to push Johnson. I want them to push Claypool, and I like the guys. I saw one of the commenters talk about Boykin. I think Boykin was underused at Baltimore. I think Boykin could become a guy that's usable for the Steelers. You look at Anthony Miller. He really connected well with Trubisky during the time they were with Chicago. Can Anthony Miller break out? Gunnar Olszewski, I think I'm saying his name right. He was a great returner for New England. I don't think he's going to be used that much from receiving, but if they keep him, he may take somebody else's position. So it's a really deep spot. I don't think everyone's going to stay with the Steelers. Maybe it's a position they could trade from at the end of the preseason. And I'd like to see how those battles develop. And I want to see some of these guys flash. Again, Johnson's good. I think he can even do better. I want to see him and Claypool flash, and I want to see the rookies push those guys.
Yeah, and Andrew Wilbar brings up a good point. Another partner in crime here at Behind the Steel Curtain, a guy I know pretty well from the Steelers Fix. Andrew says, "Would you trade Deontay Johnson if you could get at least a early to mid second round pick?" What do you think about that?
I would only trade Deontay Johnson if I see enough in these other guys where I say, wow, even if Deontay Johnson's the best, you've got development from some of these other players. I mean, hey, the draft next year. Why are we trading guys already for the draft next year? I only trade Deontay Johnson if I'm saying, dang, Anthony Miller's has really progressed, and the other guys I just mentioned progressed.
Yeah, you got to see somebody who's able to take up those wide receiver one reigns before you get rid of one, right? And I think Deontay Johnson is that for the Steelers right now, and maybe that changes this year. We will see. Let's move on to another question we had. Mike Moore says, "What about running back? What about Benny Snell? He doesn't seem to be too high on the Benny Snell train. What do you think about Benny Snell, Chris?"
I'm not seeing enough consistency for Benny Snell. One thing that frustrates me about the Steelers, even back to the times of old Le'Veon Bell, I want to see more of a different guys being used. Obviously, Najee is going to be your number one guy, your key guy, but I miss the days of D'Angelo Williams where you could have Le'Veon Bell and D'Angelo Williams coming. I think there are those type of running backs that are still out there waiting in free agency. I'm looking at guys like David Johnson or Jarrett McKinnon of Kansas City. I think those guys can be picked up. I think those guys won't cost that much money. I think those guys can be a real nice number two. I'm not saying Benny Snell needs to be shutting the door. I get a little uncomfortable if I'm saying Benny Snell is definitely my number two running back.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the Steelers kind of need a second guy that doesn't necessarily profile as a replacement back necessarily for Harris, but a guy that can fill a role in that offense well enough to allow for multiple guys maybe to fill in for a couple weeks if Najee Harris goes out with an injury. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Let's not speak that into existence, right? That would be a big deal, but yeah, I just think Snell's not the guy, the right style. And I think if you're gonna have a guy behind Najee Harris, technically it needs to be multiple people with strengths in different areas that can provide the Steelers with some kind of compensatable run game for the situations where Najee Harris isn't a go. And then in those cases, also you've got guys that can fill in for roles if Najee even just needs a breather on the sideline for a play or two. So definitely something to consider. If I'm looking at somebody specific in training camp this year that I would love to see take another step in their development, I just want to see Ahkello Witherspoon on the back end of this defense. I want to see if he brings that respect from the offensive players, like, oh man, this guy's going to be something special this year. If we start hearing talk from the offense or from these wide receivers that they don't want to go up against Ahkello, or even that they do want to because that's what makes them better, that's something that I'm looking forward to see. Does Witherspoon have what it takes to be our CB1 this year, or does that fall to somebody else? Is Levi Wallace that guy? I don't know if the Steelers necessarily brought him in to be that guy. I think they kind of pegged that role for Ahkello, but it's going to be interesting to see. I'm interested definitely in those two guys. Brian Brown has a question. He says, do you think the Steelers have adequate offensive line depth? Chris, what do you think there?
That's $1 million question. I don't know if I'll go as far as to say it's adequate. I will go as far as to say it looks a billion times better than it did this time last year.
Absolutely.
And I'm hoping they could develop. It's a great question there by Brian, but I'll be honest with you, Brian. I wasn't sure about 2 or 3 of their starters last year, let alone any depth. I think I feel a lot better. Yeah, I feel a lot better about their starters. I think Chooks is still a question. I've heard some of the guys here on the network say, hey, maybe he does better in this system. I hope that's the case. Dan Moore, I like how he progressed over last year. I'm still not ready to bet my life on if Dan Moore is going to be the left tackle of the future. But
Sure.
again, it's a lot better than it was last year. We need to wait and see what happens in training camp as the season starts.
Absolutely. And they're giving guys a shot this year to either prove they've got it or, hey, we're going to find your replacement next year. And they've got the ability to do that in the draft and free agency. So, some of these guys that have shown promise, can they take that next step? It's going to be very intriguing to see that. I think some of them can. I'm excited for Dan Moore Jr. I'm excited for either Dotson or Kendrick Green, one of those guys to really take the reins of that left guard spot, see what they can do there. Very, very interesting to see. Let's go back and talk some quarterbacks here. We do have a question from Claude Bishop. Thank you. Will Mitch be starting by midseason if he's still healthy? Chris, I've got some opinions on this. I want to hear what you think.
I think in the Steelers' mindset, they would love for him to start by midseason. I think Kenny Pickett, it would shock me if Kenny's not starting sometime this year. But I think the ideal would be is to look at Mitch as a transitional stopgap quarterback that plays decent, consistent enough where Pickett can develop. I think if Mitch is faltering horribly and you got to bring in Pickett in the first or second game, that may not be the worst thing for Kenny Pickett's career. But if you're looking at how you think the Steelers would do this year, it means it won't probably work out well. I know Ben, in his rookie year, he came in as the second game. It worked out well. The Steelers made the AFC title game. But to be honest with you, the group around him was so much stronger than the group they have currently this year. So I think that's where the difference comes in.
Yeah, it is. And, I'm working on a piece for the website about Mitchell Trubisky right now. And, I think there's just as good a shot that he is fantastic as that he stinks. Just based on where he came from, the talent that he displayed in college, some of the stuff we've seen in Chicago despite poor surroundings. Man alive, the guy's got every opportunity to be special as he does to be replaceable, early in the season, in my opinion. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in that article coming out hopefully this week sometime. But I've got a Trubisky crush right now, and hopefully he doesn't disappoint me too much. But I will say this, Kenny Pickett also, if he gets a chance this year, totally 100% ready to see this guy play and rooting for him to be the guy. I'm rooting for him to be everything he can be for this team. Absolutely. Great question there, Claude. Brian has another question here. Or Brian Brown says, do you think the Steelers' run defense will get back to where it was in, say, 2019? I'd like to think that they have a shot, but what do you think, Chris?
Stay healthy and they can do it. I mean, look, Larry Ogunjobi, I think, helps out what you're doing. Ty Lue, he helps out what they're doing. And I know these guys are getting older, but they're not dropping off on their play. Cam, for all the injury issues that the Steelers had last year, I thought Cam still was unbelievable. And I think if he gets that help just from guys staying healthy, it'll be okay. Why I like the Ogunjobi signing is he provides, he could start, and it wouldn't shock me if he starts, but now you've got depth. I think once Ty got hurt last year, it's like, oh crap, we got nowhere else to go. But I think they've got a lot more consistency. If they have healthy, they can definitely get back to where they were in 19.
Yeah, I like the Ogunjobi signing a lot because I think it allows the pieces that they were hoping to be depth pieces and not starting pieces to be that and develop. I don't think the Steelers necessarily drafted DeMarvin Leal this year in this draft to come in and be Stephon Tuitt's replacement in 2022. I think that was fleshed out the Steelers kind of agree there when they signed Ogunjobi, and it allows a guy like Leal to develop behind Cam Hayward to get some valuable reps as a role player coming in. I think he's going to have a role there. I think Montravius Adams as well. It doesn't put so much pressure on these guys to be the fix, and fill the shoes for Stephon Tuitt, which are pretty big shoes. Continuing to talk about the defensive line, we got Reginald Rivers saying, Chris, name your 7 defensive line players that will make the team. That's pressure. Pressure's on there, Chris. What you got?
Well, help me out on this because you're the expert too. Yeah,
Oh, boy.
Definitely you got to look at Cam. Definitely you got to look at Ty Alulu. Definitely you got to look at Ogunjobi.
Yep. I think those are your top 3, right? Those are your 3 guys you're thinking start in the lineup most of the time going into the season.
They spent a 3rd-round pick on Leal. So unless Leal forgets how to play football, but before the regular season, he's staying with 3rd-round draft picks stay with the team in most times. So you got 4 there. I think Chris Wormley is another guy that I wouldn't necessarily say he's guaranteed, but I think as long as he plays consistent, he's there. I think Martavius Adams is another good pick. That's 6, and I think I'm forgetting somebody that should make it. Help me out on this.
Isaiah Loudermilk, I think, should make it, right? Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, those would be my 7 guys right now, I think.
Right, and I think you've got a couple other guys like, the Davis brothers are still out there and everything, that unless one of the top 7 folders, and I would be shocked, maybe Loudermilk since he's younger, but I think the top 7 are there. Some of those other guys like the Davis brothers, maybe they make your practice squad. But that's my top 7. And here's the other thing too: they generally keep 7. What if they keep 6? Maybe one guy's on the move in a trade. You never know.
Yeah. I think Wormley probably as the vet player that is costing more than some of these rookie guys. If they're equal to or better than him in the Steelers' eyes, then maybe he finds himself as a cap saving cut sometime in training camp. There's the potential for that, but also the Steelers need as many veteran presences in that locker room as possible. I think they feel the same way, and they're going to keep as many leaders as they absolutely can, while giving these young guys a chance to prove their worth.
But some of these guys are injury prone. I mean, I would love to see Ty be healthy for a year. I don't know if I would bet you a quarter of my pocket they will. So, I mean, you're right.
Right.
Have the veterans, have the depth. Just because you have 7 good guys doesn't mean you have to start getting rid of them. I think having that depth, if you can maintain under the cap, is preferable. It's good.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Let's get back to some guys we want to see. With this question here, Claude Bishop says, will Pat Freiermuth play at a Pro Bowl level this season? Chris, I'm sure you feel the same way. This is a guy I'm really looking forward to see in training camp, what his development looks like in year 2. What do you think about Pat Freiermuth? Pro Bowl level this season?
I think he's going to be good. Let me say something that'll be controversial because we want people to get upset. The only concern I have about Pat Freiermuth was first half of the season. Pat Freiermuth, I'm like, all right, let's get the bus ready for the Hall of Fame. Everything's good to go. But then he tailed off. You see a lot of rookies. The season's too long. It's 16 games, a lot longer than they played in college. Now it's 17.
17, yeah.
It's crazy. Let's go back to 16. That's another argument for another day. But I think Freiermuth, like a lot of rookies, you're like, oh, wow, this is long. And you don't know it until you face it. And he kind of tailed off a little bit toward the end. And he admitted it. I mean, it wasn't anything awful or nefarious. So I'm hoping in this development, we see a lot about how he's working hard during the offseason and everything. Hope he develops the stamina and everything so he can look good in weeks 13 through 17 as good as he looked maybe for the first 10, 12 weeks.
Sure. I think one of the things the Steelers do extremely well as a staff is communicate to their guys how important it is to be ready for that 17-game season in year 2. And I think you see these guys really put in the work in the offseason. We've seen huge leaps from guys in their second year. Le'Veon Bell, one of those guys, lost some weight, right? And improved his receiving ability and took off in his second year. You talk about even like Chase Claypool last year, he talked about hitting the rookie wall in his rookie year, and he wasn't as effective down the stretch. But I think more scheme had to do with some of his issues last year, and but he was a physical force on the field for all 17 weeks. He wasn't injury prone going down the stretch. He he was in good physical shape. I think the Steelers teach their guys well to do that. So I think Freiermuth has a good chance to be Pro Bowl talent. But that being said, who are some of those guys in the AFC, that he's competing with? He's got Mark Andrews, who's going to be a focal point of his offense. He's got Travis Kelce, going to be a focal point in his office. There's probably some guys I'm not remembering. Darren Waller, focal point in that offense as well. So he's going to have to really be special this year to be Pro Bowl caliber. Now, can he take the next step and be a fantastic tight end and not make the Pro Bowl? Yeah. I think he can also do that as well. Brian Brown says the Steelers are going to have to cut some receivers who are the ones that don't make it. You got anybody that's like, I don't know if we're going to see this guy come the end of training camp?
Well, I saw a comment in the chat saying they're going to keep 7 receivers, which is entirely possible. So, I mean, you're looking, Chase and Deontay, unless you get traded, they're definitely in. I look at Pickens and Austin as definitely being in. I think you look at Miller and you look at Boykin as guys who are in. Again, maybe I'm forgetting somebody, but those would be probably my top 6. Gunner, again, Gunner's not your traditional receiver, but I guess if you assuming you keep him, he's kind of got that receiver role. So that's my 7. Chad or Jeremy, am I forgetting somebody?
We've got, Steven Sims. Got, I think it's Cody White, and then some other guys that are like practice squad level guys. Did you mention Calvin Austin in that group of guys? Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
You're definitely keeping those guys. Yeah.
Sure. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 wide receivers on the roster. Looks like if they keep 7, that's 5 guys seeing the door, or 4 guys seeing the door. It's going to be very interesting to see how that shakes out. But I think
let's be really honest. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Steven Sims is a real nice guy. I cover.
Sure.
I do some coverage of Ohio State for what I do here in Columbus with USA Today. Very impressed.
Go Bucks!
After the tragic death of Dwayne Haskins, Steven Sims was one of the guys that spoke at his funeral. Steven Sims is a great A-class guy. Steven Sims probably isn't going to break your top 7.
Sure.
Cody White, I know they hired his dad. I'm going to accuse the Steelers of all kinds of, nefarious, family ties if they keep Cody White over, one of the top 7 guys. Sure, those are great guys for a practice squad. I think you've got your top 7 set unless somebody overwhelms that we're not anticipating.
Sure. Andrew Wilbar. He loves his boys, right? Sims could be the next AB if given the opportunity. I don't know about that, Andrew. I don't know about that.
Sure.
That's it.
It's fine. We're all entitled to our opinions. Everyone's got
sure, yeah, absolutely.
The old comment. But, Andrew's guys, Andrew loves his Steven Sims and Malik Willis, and that's great. But,
hey.
Sorry. I mean, we all have our opinions. I mean, who are you keeping Steven Sims over? I'll put that
right.
way. And if he flashes and does great, fine. I mean, they can keep him. But I'm just looking at everything I've seen so far. Hey, maybe I'll be the next AB if you give me the opportunity. It's probably not going to happen, So
right.
And honestly, do you really want to be the next AB? You'll be good for a couple of years, and you'll start whining, and you'll end your career by walking off half naked from an NFL game. I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? So
sure, there you go. Steven Sims to me kind of he's on the same cusp as Anthony Miller, in my opinion. I think those guys, not necessarily the same player, but the same position on this roster. So if it's an either-or position, it probably is either-or between those guys. 2 dogs, 1 bone, as Mike Tomlin likes to say. Mike Moore says, you mentioned scheme. Do you think with the major changes on offense, do you think the full implementation of the Canada offense will be successful? I have some seriously high hopes for the Canada system. I don't know if we'll see it flesh out and be like a top 10 unit this year, but I think it's going to be something that will change a good bit from last year. I think the offense is going to look different just because he's got players in place that can run the offense he likes. It's not going to be a Rothless Canada hybrid system. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I understand. Big Ben was not the fit for what minicamp was trying to do.
Absolutely not.
But good, good gracious, I'm trying to be polite here. They got to show something because watching the offense last year under the Cannon system, I know there was some limitations based on who Big Ben is now compared to what Big Ben was 5-10 years ago. But that offense has got to show something. I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to be a top 10 offense, but it's going to be. He needs to show some stuff. Hey,
Yeah.
if I can mention something, and again, I appreciate your guys' patience. I saw a comment from Kathy going, "Are you in an airplane?" I'm not in an airplane. My house is very noisy right now, so I'm out in my garage. And my apologies in advance. We have some traffic going by my house, and somebody was driving on their rims, so you probably heard some noise in the background. So my apology. Thank you, Steelers Nation, for being patient with me, but I just had to address that. I'm in my garage right now, so this is really fun.
Hey, we do it where we can do it, right?
Yeah,
I think
definitely.
it's this is going to be a fun training camp, a fun upcoming schedule. Let's get to one more question here, and it's another one from Brian. He says, "Do you think Miles Jack will shore up the middle linebacker position and help Devin Bush play better? Coach Flores' influence, I think, will help." Chris, what do you think about Miles Jack and Devin Bush this year?
I like the combination. I have high hopes for him. I'm hoping, and obviously there's a lot of things that went to Devin Bush. I mean, he was hurt last year. I think he wasn't entirely healthy, which I think really affected his play. Love the fact that the Steelers have a great coach like Brian Flores. I think Brian Flores can make Devin Bush a better linebacker, but you know how it goes. You've got to listen to your coach. You can have the greatest coach in the world, but you've got to put that into play. So it's going to be a big question. I mean, that's why training camp can't come soon enough. We could talk for the next half hour about all these questions coming up. I think it's possible. I'm excited to see what can happen with a good Jack Bush combination. We just got to see it in reality, and hopefully it works out. I have high hopes, but I'm a little guarded, but I think it could be a good combo.
Yeah, man. I think that athletically they match up well with what the AFC brings from an offensive perspective. The AFC is all about those big passing offenses. And I know the Steelers play some teams in their division like the Ravens and the Browns that really like to run the football. They're running teams first and foremost. But given the fact that they have to play Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, the Bengals, and the guys that come out of their backfield like Joe Mixon that likes to catch passes, and these guys profile as good coverage linebackers, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Steelers use them. Sub-package football, obvious rushing downs. Are both of those guys going to be on the field? Do they bring in somebody else as the thumper, maybe a Buddy Johnson type guy? I think that's a guy we're looking forward to see this year in training camp as well. It's going to be a fun rest of the off season, and I think right now every team in the NFL, every fan, if you ask them, they can see a scenario where their team is really good, but we can also see scenarios where they're not so good, and I think we got to be open-minded this year, especially as Steelers fans, to hey, there's a lot of changes happening. There's a lot of structural changes, a lot of scheme changes, a lot of personnel changes. The stadium changed names, for crying out loud. So there's a lot of changes, right? So we're going to have to see how this team copes with that, how they deal with flying under the radar. And it's going to be fun. One last question before we go. Let's do Steeler Chick 46. There's always talk about entrances to Latrobe. How would you make a special entrance if you were a player? Chris, man, this is a fun question. Let's talk.
Yeah, you go first. I'm thinking of a couple of ideas.
Okay, sure. So let's see here. I'm going to say that personality-wise, and you could probably bounce this off all of my family members, and they'd say he's going to pick the most flamboyant way to get in, right? So I don't know what I'd do. If I had player money, obviously, I'm going to buy myself probably some really souped-up sports car and just driving, making a bunch of noise. And, making a bunch of noise. Maybe a couple donuts in the parking lot, back that thing in right next to Coach T, So just really make my presence known there at Latrobe. Just a fun way to do it. Music, probably some music blaring as well. And, make myself an entrance. What do you think, Chris?
I've gotten a little bit more shy as I've gotten older.
Sure.
So I'm 47 now, so not that they would ever have a 47-year-old at Latrobe. But if I was coming to this year, I'd probably drive my car and be under the radar, because if I did anything flamboyant, they'd be like, "Holy cow, Chris is amazing. What's he gonna do on the field?" And I'm gonna get on the field and I'll get blocked and break my leg the first play, and they'll be like, "Oh, what a failure!" So I want to be under the radar, because if you're under the radar and when you flop like I was, a 47-year-old rookie, no one would freak out. But if I came in like AB or something, and everyone's like, "Whoa, he's amazing, he's going to be great," and when they find out how horrible of a player I really am, they'll disappoint people. So I want to just set a low bar of expectations, so when I fail horribly, it won't affect me or the public as much.
There you go. Maybe another one this year is just drive up in a big old ketchup bottle. That's all you got to do.
See, but then that goes back to everyone complaining about the stadium. Like, why is Big Ben commenting on the stadium name change? I'm not going to win this argument here, but it was crazy. My goodness.
Yeah, well, hey, like you said, Steelers fans just looking for something to talk about till training camp kicks off. It's coming up quick. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here on the Steelers Q&A. Thank you for your interaction with us tonight. It's always fun to get to talk to you guys. Chris, I'll let you plug your stuff coming up for the website, and then we'll get out of here.
Yeah, our show is the Pittsburgh Steelers Power Half Hour. We get released every Sunday morning, so there's a new episode up there. I do it with my friends Paul Yanchek and Joe Frost. This week we're yelling about the stadium, and I'm yelling at Steelers fans who don't get it. So if you didn't have enough of my venting, I vent a little bit more. And we also do some Steelers content on my personal podcast, The Ohioan. So check that out. If you like me, Paul, and Joe being silly, we just get a lot more sillier on there too. So it's a lot of fun.
There you go, man. My wife is from Columbus, so we were up there just a couple weeks ago, actually, and she's converted me into a Buckeyes fan. So it's a lot of fun. Sounds like you got some Buckeye blood running in you as well. So
to be honest, as a journalist, I've kind of given up most fandom. I pay attention because it's definitely part of what I do with my work, but it's just more of just
you got to keep it all in perspective, right?
Well, when you get to be a journalism guy, you lose some of your fandom, which is disappointing. I mean, I miss kind of doing that, but Ohio State's a big thing down here, and it's fun to be around, and it's fun to write about. Obviously, geez, we're putting out 4 or 5 stories a day on the Buckeyes since July. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right, and people are reading them. I'm sure of it. All right, well, you can follow me on Twitter at the Betz93, THEBETZ93. The Steelers Fix. We're actually recording tonight after this is over. Andrew and I are, and we're going to come to you again on Tuesday afternoon, right at noon. So check out the Steelers Fix. I mentioned my article about Mitchell Trubisky. That's coming up here soon, and then I will also be continuing my series on the Steelers fantasy football profiles. And I think we're going to talk some Deontay Johnson next. So check that out when it comes out. As always, remember to check out BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers. Chris, have a good night, my man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks.
Thank you, Steeler Nation. We'll talk to you again soon.